everyone, welcome to JonStar Reviews. Now as you may know, when it comes to DreamWorks Animation, 2023 was another one of their worst years in the company, with two of their films being mediocre compared to the 2022 output, that being Ruby Gilman, Teenage Kraken, and Trolls Band Together. What's more damaging about those films is that one failed financially while another financially succeeded, which for the latter, which is not a good sign since Trolls might end up getting franchise fatigue. But the consequences that in 2025 their productions will soon to be outsourced by other production companies. So for this year, with two of their last in-house productions made in Glendale, the best thing we can do, including myself, is to hope they go out with a solid bang or a solid skadoosh, because for one of their second to last films I'll be talking about is the fourth Kung Fu Panda installment. But before I get into that, let me recap my thoughts on the trilogy before this. The first one, it was absolutely a refreshing output DreamWorks put back in 2008 with the lack of pop culture references and have a more action-oriented feel to it, which is highly admirable. The second might be one of their best sequels with its darker tone and might be on par with the second Shrek and How to Train Your Dragon movies in comparison. But when it comes to number 3, it has a more comedic feel to it and doesn't really take itself seriously compared to the previous two. So, how did Kung Fu Panda 4 do for me? Well, let's find out. So, this story is about the spiritual leader, Po, searching to find the next dragon warrior he needs to pass on to with his staff of wisdom. Along the way, there's another villain who's trying to take all of the previous opponents Po confronted upon in order to gain more respect. As you can see, when it comes to the latter subplot, you could tell that it's has very similarities to Kung Fu Panda 2 and 3, where Po has to face a villain by going in a new location. And while it does seem a bit repetitive, its execution wise, it does take itself a little more seriously than the third installment with its villain, which I'll get into later. But when it comes to Po's character arc itself, that story reminded me of how Woody had to pass on his badge to Jessie in the fourth Toy Story film. And here, I prefer this type of storytelling here than in the Pixar film I mentioned. Because while that film felt unnecessary to many, this one doesn't seem like the case for the most part. But when it comes to the humor, it might be a bit out there in some areas, but it's mostly very good. And the heart, it's still there, involving around Po and another side character, which will also be explained later, where they add some chemistry between. And for the action sequences, it's still as engaging as ever. And there's quite a lot than the third one. So all in all, while it does have various elements that repeats in the previous two films, including the first one with its homages, which are also nice callbacks. The passing of the torch story's execution plays out very well. Now for the animation, while some of you might be disappointed that this is nothing compared to Puss in Boots: The Last Wish with its stylized animation, the animation is still top notch. Like with the third Kung Fu Panda movie, one admirable thing I like is its vibrant colors and its lighting. And even though this isn't done by Oriental DreamWorks, it's still pretty wonderful to look at, especially with the use of colors. Another aspect is regarding the fight scenes is how there are some parts where there are ink brush strokes that almost feel like it came from an actual anime media, which is very amazing. It's like comic books, manga, you know what I mean. As for the backgrounds itself, well, there are some beautiful landscapes on Poe's fourth journey. Some highlights of the movie are a tilting restaurant at the edge of a river, which does provide some nice action and comedy in a subplot which will be mentioned. Juniper City, unlike the Gummin City in the second film where it's inhabited by wolves, here there's a variety of animals inhabited. Like there's bulls, pangolins, if I'm saying it right, and chameleons, or reptiles for the most part, say. And I thought it was quite busy compared to what the second film have, like a crowded area. So far, the animation is absolutely still as amazing as ever, and one of the best traits of the Kung Fu Panda franchises. So you can't go wrong with these animators' hard work. Now on to the characters. We have Po, who is still his clumsy but lovable self, but his determination is still in him as a dragon warrior, and he has a character arc where he needs to find a suitable successor to be the next dragon warrior, as he is the spiritual leader and can no longer hold the position. There's also the side characters, which for all you might be disappointed that the Furies 5 aren't in it that much for reasons you'll have to find out yourselves. And Shifu is still demoted, just like in the third film. I actually don't mind this change at all, because compared to like Kung Fu Panda 1 and 2, they had more prominent roles there than in the third film. So it's fine. As well as this film trying to not value quantity over quality. So by Poe's side, we have Chen, a stealing fox played by no one other than Aquafina. She becomes Poe's guide to help find this villain and take her down before the going gets tough. And speaking of villain, we have the chameleon. One aspect I would like to give credit to is how she, while not have a too much of a in-depth backstory like with Tai Lung or Lord Chen, she's far more threatening compared to the third film's Kai. And I believe that really helps with the film going back to basics for the most part in terms like what was missing in the third film. like the intensity. There's also an underground gang led by Han, who helps guide Po and Shen to help fight the chameleon from taking its powers from the villains who are worthy of Po. There's a subplot between Po's fathers, Mr. Ping and Lee. While they have been like reduced to like the warring fathers, they are still fun to watch with their comedy and their support for their son Po. And along with nice acting between James Hahn and Bryan Cranston, it really gives the film much more enjoyability. So yeah, while there isn't much characters like with the absence of like Shifu or the Furious Five with their reduced roles, the other characters still have that charm like ability to them that I really admire. So, what are my thoughts on Kung Fu Panda 4? Well, first off, going from last year's Trolls Band Together, which was mediocre for the most part, to this good film, it felt like a godsend. Like, for one thing, the passing of the torch story is a very solid one in comparison to how Toy Story 4 did it. The animation, while not stylized as Puss in Boots' The Last Wish, is still top notch. And as for the characters, with a few missing or reduced roles, they are still as charming as ever. As well as the voice acting, especially from Jack Black, Awkwafina, Dustin Hoffman, James Hahn, Bryan Cranston, and many more. For my recommendation, well, if you love the Kung Fu Panda movies, then you'll definitely love it. Especially how this one takes itself more seriously than Kung Fu Panda 3. For me, it's kind of hard to dislike how this franchise is really going on, especially with the fifth film plan. And there are signs that it may have run its course, but I wouldn't mind if the franchise goes on for actually two more, as former CEO Jeffrey Katzenberg planned. So I think this might be a good start for a new trilogy. My rating, well, a bit controversial, but I enjoyed this more than Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. Well, I know I haven't given this much love as others did. I was being more cautious with how I rate them when comparing to sequels. But for this one, I give Kung Fu Panda 4 a 9 out of 10 for being an amazing film. And please don't judge me by this. Well, join me next time, and for my next film, I'll be reviewing the Garfield movie, which will be an interesting case. And to close off, since I'll be showing less on the camera for my future reviews, I hope I go out with a bang with this one. So, skadoosh.